together for the next 3 hours. So 9 o'clock is when we'll be saying goodbye. And in this first hour, though, we'll be looking at Kenya getting the long-awaited compensation from the UK for Kenyans that were affected by a 2021 military fire. And also, South Sudan's political stability faces renewed strain. Those stories and more coming up in this hour. Let's get our news first, though. Here's Onele Nzinzi with that. And then following her is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. Police in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province say they are concerned about the rising number of extortion cases. The area of Verulam, north of Durban, is said to have reported the highest number of extortion cases. The most common cases involve criminals demanding protection money from businesses, construction sites, or ordinary individuals. Police say most victims are threatened with death or defamation of character if payment is not made. Police spokesperson Robert Nechiunda is encouraging victims to report such cases.
The 4 suspects were arrested on Sunday, right after the incident where they have raided his shop of cigarettes. They took all the stock of cigarette, alleging that it is a counterfeit or illicit cigarette, and then they left with him. Then they instructed him to phone the wife to bring 100,000 rand cash. That is when the Hawks members from Durban Serious Corruption Investigation were alerted about the incident, and they followed up until the meeting point that they have set up for the complainant to bring cash. That's where they were arrested immediately after the transaction.
Paramilitaries in Sudan's Darfur region have been accused of killing more than a dozen civilians as they tried to flee the besieged city of Al Fashir. The Sudan Doctors Network accused fighters from the Rapid Support Forces of continuing a campaign of forced displacement and ethnic cleansing. The BBC's Kalkidan Yebeltal.
A statement by Sudan's Doctors Network says among those killed by fighters from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces were 5 children. The incident took place on the road between the besieged city of El Fasher and Tawila. The RSF has repeatedly been accused of targeting non-Arab communities in Darfur, an allegation it dismisses. Fighting between the RSF and the Sudanese army has continued to intensify in parts of Sudan.
Senegal authorities have detected a case of Mpox in a foreign man who arrived in the West African country last week. The Health Ministry says it is the first case it had detected this year. It was not immediately clear how many cases, if any, had been reported there before in January. No new cases have been detected since then, and 25 people were being monitored. Mpox can spread through close contact. It causes flu-like symptoms and pus-filled lesion on the body. In August 2024, the World Health Organization declared Mpox a global public health emergency for a second time in 2 years, following an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo that had spread to neighboring countries. There's still no trace of the one person who went missing after an overcrowded rubber boat overturned in central Mediterranean Sea at the weekend. 3 young sisters aged 9, 11 and 17 drowned in the incident after waves up of 101.5 meters repeatedly washed over the vessel. A German rescue charity had said about 65 people were rescued, including the sisters' mother and brother, as well as 3 pregnant women and a 7-month-old baby. The rubber boat left from Libya's Zurawa city and started taking an increasing amount of water a few hours later. And lastly, U.S. President Donald Trump is due to sign an executive order that seeks to end cashless bail by threatening to revoke federal funding for a jurisdiction that uses it, the White House had said. The move is the latest effort by Trump and Republicans to place crime on the national agenda as they preview a game plan to retain power in Washington in the midterm election next year. Cashless bail is a system where defendants are released from jail while awaiting trial based on their promise to appear in court rather than paying a specific cash of money. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, semi-final day at the Chan 2024 tournament, while Madison Keys suffered a shock US Open first-round defeat. I'll give you details on these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa.
Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine.
Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m.
Central African Time, only on Channel Africa.
So we get to the section of the show now where we give you a roundup. This section is called the African Roundup, and that's some stories that we've compiled through our team of researchers, our reporters and editors to bring you into the know in terms of what you could have missed yesterday in news and throw forward to what to expect to develop in this new day. Today we start with Zambia, where the president there in Zambia, Hakainde Hichilema, says the government is in discussions with the family of former President Edgar Lungu concerning his burial. Hichilema made the remarks following a meeting with Zimbabwean second Vice President Kembo Mohadi at State House on Monday.
The most that we hope to resolve it, our team is there. They're engaging the family, and any support, Your Honor, we can get from family members such as yourselves would be appreciated to help us put closure to this unfortunate situation. Zimbabwe and Zambia have a lot to do on the economic front. Development of our two countries' economies, infrastructure, Kariba Dam, power stations, given the climate change, negative effects of climate change, we need to do more to manage our common assets.
Africa health ministers from across Africa met in Lusaka, Zambia, to open the 75th session of the World Health Organization Regional Committee for Africa, the continent's top health decision-making body. Representatives from 47 countries are discussing strategies to tackle health challenges and approve key resolutions to improve public health. WHO, or World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, offered further insights.
WHO is committed to supporting all member states around the world and here in Africa to build strong, resilient, inclusive health systems guided by evidence and grounded in equity. And yet, as you know, WHO is also facing a very difficult financial situation. This is a crisis that has been long in the making, and it's one we saw coming. 2017-2018, when we started our WHO transformation, one of the risks we identified was WHO's heavy reliance on earmarked funds from a handful of traditional donors.
Africa must fast-track the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area to promote self-sufficiency, said Elizabeth Sidiropoulos, who is CEO of the South African Institute of International Affairs. She made the remarks during a seminar on global trade amid rising protectionism.
Historically, we've seen countries use economic tools for foreign policy gains. This is now driven on steroids. And so that is also another characteristic of the current environment. What that means is that whereas previously, I think already before 2025, countries were recognizing that they needed to create new strategies, identify opportunities across the board, not just focusing on traditional partners in economics and so on. Now the fact is that we have to do that strategic realignment even faster in order not to affect our very vital national interests. And if we're looking at it in the context of South Africa, for example, we're talking about how we deal with unemployment, poverty, inequality.
The United Nations on Friday urged governments and employers to act urgently to protect workers from rising extreme heat as climate change drives more frequent and intense heat waves. The updated guidance, first issued in 1969, is described as much needed.
Rudiger Krush, the WHO's interim director for environment, climate change, and health, said billions of people are exposed to dangerous temperatures at work due to worsening heat waves.
Protecting workers from heat is a matter of life and death. It is not just about temperature, it's about inequality. The poorest workers are on the front lines of the climate crisis.
Health risks include heat stroke, dehydration, kidney dysfunction, and neurological disorders. The WHO and the World Meteorological Association say manual workers in sectors like agriculture, construction, and fisheries, as well as vulnerable populations in developing countries, are particularly at risk.
There is a growing push for Africa to harness its mineral resources for economic growth, highlighted at the two-day Africa Critical Minerals Summit in Johannesburg. The summit gathers key stakeholders from across the continent to discuss minerals diplomacy and the urgent need to boost mineral beneficiation. Africa Mineral Strategy Group Chief of Staff Patrick Mulindwa Lubega has more.
The global energy transition is happening. Energy transition or cleaner energies is a must. Africa stands a great advantage because we host the biggest reserves of these metals required in the transition. But what are we saying as the Africa Mineral Strategy Group is that we will not be suppliers as we have been. We have supplied the world for a very, very long time. This time we want to be strategic partners. And what does that mean? We locally want to process, even if it means primary processing at home. Then we can export. But above all, we want the industries to be here. And it's possible.
To come. And that's how we wrap our Africa Roundup on this Tuesday. We'll do this again tomorrow after the 6 a.m. news. Coming up, we delve deeper into the stories that you need to know about the East African region of the continent. We'll be speaking to a resident analyst there, Dennis Beru. Stay with us.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheki Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça, on a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheki?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Milvest Advisory and the city of Umhlathuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Africa aims to promote the secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from August 27 to 29 at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay, KZN, South Africa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, now let's take a look at some of the issues or stories making headlines in the East African region. And we speak to journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, Dennis Beru. Dennis, how are you on this Tuesday?
I'm doing well, Asanda. I hope you are well in South Africa.
We're well, thank you very much. And we always look forward to having these catch-up sessions with you on Tuesdays. And today we start with your home country, Kenya. And Kenya getting or the UK rather, compensating Kenyans that were affected by a 2021 military fire. Can you take us back into what caused this wildfire and the kind of devastation it left behind?
Thank you so much, Asanda. Of course, finally, after 4 years, when there was a devastating fire outbreak in the British training camp in Laikipia, And now the UK government has agreed to pay the compensation for thousands of Kenyans who were affected by fire that was caused by a military exercise 4 years ago. Of course, this is out of a court settlement that follows a length legal battle in which 7,723 claimants said they had lost property and suffered a health complication because of the 2021 fire in the Lola Daiga Conservancy in Kenya's Rift Valley. Of course, this is a region where the British soldiers have been training for years. Of course, through the spokesman of the British High Commission in Nairobi, quote in court, said that he accepts the responsibility of the fire, and that's why the compensation had been paid, adding that it was the right to do so. Of course, we do not have a clear confirmation of the amount, the amount of money that was paid, but according to the lawyers in the case, say that around 2.9 million US dollars were paid, and of course the compensation was generous and fair. This is based on the rigorous assessment. This is by the spokesman of the British High Commission. Remember, the lawyer representing the over 7,000 claimants, Kevin Kubai, called it the best possible outcome, despite the complaint from the complaint from the clients that got the sum they received were too small to compensate. Remember, Asanda, during the fire outbreak, it was really difficult to ascertain at what level the complainants were affected, because the fire outbreak took place in the training region in Loidaiga, and some of them complained that saying that they inhale a smoke that really affected the health. But remember, there were no documents to really ascertain to what level the inhalation affected them. Remember, the Lodaiga Conservancy, which is about 49,000 acres of hilly bushland with backdrop of ice capped from Mount Kenya. It is part of the Laikipia's plateau, where hundreds of thousands of acres were saved by the British during the colonial era, leading to land dispute that we've been witnessing until now. And Asanda, of course, this is one of its kind, compensation. Remember, we've had, issues, complaint from locals about the British Army. Remember, some years ago, we have had issues of sexual violence, murder that is being done by the British soldiers at the Batuk in Nyati facility that is owned by the British government.
So, as you say, there's been complaints for those who are still within the area that there's air pollution. But in terms of further environmental damage, has the area been cleared for that? And also, how long will it take then for the air pollution to be addressed, that issue?
Remember, this is a 70 kilometer, that is about 45 miles from the Lewa Conservancy. And Asanda, this is an area that is a military zone area, meaning that it will not be cleared because there are no inhabitants in this region, because it was set aside by the government of British. Remember, this land was acquired during the colonial era, and it has been used as a training facility for thousands of British soldiers who train in this facility. And of course, we've been having the joint military exercise between the British soldiers and the Kenyan army in the area. So the area has not been cleared because it is a military zone that it is being operated by the British soldiers in the region.
So, in terms of conservation in Kenya, what does this mean then? The case, is it a celebration? Because, as you say, the area was a conserved conservation area. It was affected as a protected conservancy. What does it mean then for conservation in the country and other environmental laws and environmentalists?
Of course, Asanda, for the conversation purposes, of course, during the case, we saw so many environmental activists, coming out, calling out the British Army to take full responsibility for the huge acres of land that were razed down by fire that was caused by a stove that was knocked down by a military gadget. Of course, and now moving forward, of course, now we've seen these, and we've seen this call by the activists that, of course, there must be compensation in that regard. But remember, the British embassy confirmed that they only compensated over 7,000 inhabitants or claimants who resides within that zone.
Let's move to Somalia now, where 3 former presidents have gathered to share a call, and they're speaking out against the land misuse there and forced evictions. The presidents say that this is unlawful appropriation. Why do they say that?
Of course, Asanda, this is very unprecedented joint statement by the 3 surviving ex-presidents. That is Sharif, Sheikh Ahmed Abdi Qasim Salad Hassan, and the recent President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo. Of course, they have strongly denounced the President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud government for what they characterize as the unlawful appropriation of and sale of public land. Of course, they accuse the administration of orchestrating land transfers without the adequate oversight or legal protocol. Of course, noting that many of the disposal occurred without recognizing the surplus status. And the proceeds of these state treasury, of course, that is now through the National Contracts Agency. And their joint letter also argued that, the businesses and the public are to abstain from supporting or purchasing illegally transferred property, labeling such deals as a legitimate and high risk. Of course, Somalia's civil society and political analysts have welcomed the intervention, calling it a powerful call for the governance accountability. Remember that the surviving presidents have publicly united in criticizing, of course, signaling a deep institutional concern over land governance and its implication for Somalia's fragile stability. Of course, the regions in question here is the eviction of Atarambuka, a region where we saw clashes erupted between security functions. Of course, this is as emblematic to the danger or overreach. And of course, this call comes at a time when Somalia is still battling, the jihadist groups, and of course. They were saying that, of course, through the letter that the real issues that government should be focusing on, rather than selling a public land that might also see chaos erupt as a result of that issue.
All right, let's move to Ethiopia now. Ethiopian Airlines is still unable to recover its funds that are frozen in Eritrea. In what ways has this freezing of funds affected Ethiopian Airlines?
Of course, the Ethiopian airline remains locked in a dispute that span over 2 years. This is a frozen funds in Eritrea, and has not recovered the money the current chief executive officer confirming that all court efforts, of course, have been failed, and the matter now sits squarely with the political arena. Of course, this is not the right approach. Of course, the standoff, which has dragged into the second year already, for the suspension of all flights to Asmara, the capital of Eritrea. That is since that September 2024, and continues to disrupt the travel for families, the businesses, and of course students who use these vital link between the two capitals. Of course, Asanda, this comes at a time, of course, that we've had issues that has been witnessed for between the two countries. Of course, the political tension between Eritrea and of course Ethiopia, and we've seen in cases whereby there are political and totally we've seen that there are no businesses between taking place between the two countries because of the linkage that is Asmara and Addis Ababa through the Ethiopian airline. Of course, the disputes, frozen accounts contested here is about 3 million US dollar for alleged unpaid services lost. Baggage claim, it says goes back more than 2 decades ago, and this is now an excuse that the Eritrean government or Eritrean airline is now coming up with, and the Ethiopian airline says that just give us back our accounts. We need to access our bank accounts so that we can continue with business as it has been before.
Is it a purely business decision, this freezing of funds, or is it a political one? As the two countries have had strained relations for about 2 decades now.
Of course, this is business, and some of the commentators are saying that, of course, let it be handled business-wise, but not political-wise, because we've had tension. Remember, for the past we've had issue over 20 years ago between the two countries, and of course we still have the tension between the two countries, especially the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And remember, recently we've had tensions where the two countries are at the loggerhead, trying to to show that we still have the military prowess over you. And of course, Ethiopian Airline reported despite all these conversation, all these the frozen accounts, we've seen Ethiopian Airline record over 7.6 billion US dollar in the fiscal year that is ended June 30th, which is an 8% rise on year to year. Of course, absorbing 28 million loss in the domestic operation due to currency devaluation and high costs.
Before we completely run out of time, sorry to cut you there, Dennis, I want to touch on South Sudan just briefly for about a minute. The political stability in that country is facing renewed strain, and this is as calls grow to replace first Vice President Riek Machar with Stephen Parkour, who is leader of a breakaway SPLIO faction. What can you tell us there?
Of course, thank you so much, Asanda. This is a very critical issue in South Sudan at the moment, whereby, of course, we had, a bit of stability in the country, but now we have now renewed the strain after General Hamis Abdelatif Chowolom urged President Salva Kiir Mayardit to replace Vice President Riek Machar with Stephen Parkour, leader of a breakaway SPLM-IO faction. Of course, Machar is an architect of a 2018 peace accord, has been under house arrest since March over an ongoing criminal investigation, a move that has deepened division within the party. Of course, in April, SPLM-IO splintered with called Juba-based faction pledging to work with Kiir, while Machar royalist rallied around the deputy who is Oyet Nathaniel. Of course, General Hamis, once a member of the Riek Machar SPLM-OL, has now aligned with Kiir, argued that the Qual's leadership is essential to safeguarding the peace agreement. Of course, he warned that the delays in decision making will embolden international actors to intervene, stressing that only swift action such as appointing a Kohl as vice president and recognizing allies will preserve the country's fragile political balance. Remember, we've had tension in the country among the warring faction. Of course, there are still tensions between the supporters of Riek Machar, whom people say that, of course, it is very unfair for him to be under house arrest, yet is the architect of the peace accord
Dennis,
that was signed in 2018 between Machar and Salva Kiir.
We're going to leave it there for today. And again, we appreciate your time. Have a great day, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Asanda.
Thank you. Dennis Beru is journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, giving us our East Africa wrap. Let's go to news headlines now. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Botswana's President Duma Boko has declared a state of public health emergency. This follows reports of a dire shortage of medicines at public clinics and hospitals. The Basic Education Minister in South Africa, Siviwe Gwarube, says government is determined to build a quality education system to which all children can have access. And the international community has condemned Israel after its airstrike hit a hospital in southern Gaza. 20 people, including 5 journalists, were killed in the attack, which happened yesterday. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's get our first full sports bulletin as we catch up with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start with football news. So today we'll provide a first ever meeting between Morocco as well as Senegal at the Total Energies African Nations CHAN tournament when they clash in the semi-finals in Kampala, Uganda. It also brings together the winners of the last 3 editions. Morocco were champions in 2018 and 2020 against the defending champions Senegal, who are obviously champions about 2 years ago. Morocco will face West African opposition for a 9th time at a CHAN tournament. They struggled initially, failing to win any of their first 3 encounters, drawing with Burkina Faso and then losing to Nigeria in 2014 and Cote d'Ivoire in 2016. Since then, they have won 5 in a row, including emphatic victories against Mauritania, Nigeria, Guinea, Togo, as well as Mali. Senegal, meanwhile, faced North African opposition for only the 3rd time. They lost 2-0 to Tunisia back in 2011 before beating Algeria on penalties in 2022. At that final, after a goalless draw, they are yet to score against North African opposition in open play. Meanwhile, Madagascar as well as Sudan will meet for a place in the final of the CHAN tournament when they clash in the other semi-final in Dar es Salaam later on tonight. Now, this is the second meeting between Madagascar as well as Sudan at a CHAN tournament. Their first clash came in the group stages back in the 2022 edition in a 3-team group that also included Ghana. Madagascar, meanwhile, won that decisive encounter by 3-0 to advance to the group stages and as the group winners alongside Ghana. For Sudan, this will be their 3rd match against Southern African opposition. They previously managed to defeat Zambia back in 2018 in the quarterfinals, but went on to lose to Madagascar in the 2022 competition, and that defeat was in the group stages. In athletics news now, Ferdinand Omanyala, who holds the African 100-meter record, is injured and has pulled out of this week's Diamond League final in Zurich in Switzerland, which is the last event before the Tokyo World Championships. Now, the 29-year-old is one of 17 Kenyans who have qualified for Zurich, which is the globe's top athletes, will compete on Wednesday as well as Thursday. Omanyala, who set the African 100-meter male record of 9.6 7-7 back in September of 2021, was selected at the Kenyan trials in July as the country's only male entrant in the 100-meter at the Tokyo World Championships. He has, though, struggled to find his winning form in the Diamond League this season. Meanwhile, Faith Kipyegon, the three-time world 1,500-meter champion, as well as the 10,000-meter champion Beatrice Chebet, will also be competing in Zurich. They will join the Olympic 800-meter champion as well as the Diamond League winner Emmanuel Wanyoni, who also choked up 4 wins with his fastest times this season. In summer tennis news now, Australian Open champion Madison Keys says nerves got the better of her for the very first time in a while after a surprise defeat by the world number 82 Renata Zarazui in the US Open first round. Now the Keys, competing in New York for the first time since becoming a Grand Slam champion, put in an error-strewn performance in a 6-7, 7-6 and 7-5 defeat by the Mexican. Now the American made 89 unforced errors, hit 14 double faults and saved just 10 of the 10 break points that she faced. Now Keys started the year in superb fashion, beating two-time defending champion Aryna Sabalenka in Melbourne to win her first ever Grand Slam title. But after reaching the quarterfinals of the French Open, the 30-year-old has suffered a surprise third-round Wimbledon exit to the 37-year-old Laura Sugmund just last month. And this is what she had to say after that defeat in the first round in the early hours of this morning.
My nerves really got the better of me, and it kind of became a little bit paralyzing. I felt like I was just slow. I wasn't seeing things the way that I wanted to, which I feel like resulted in a lot of bad decisions and lazy footwork. So I feel like that's kind of the summary.
Meanwhile, British number 1 Jack Draper says he was almost a bit happy to drop a set as he was put through a severe examination of his fitness on his US Open return. So Draper needed to dig deep to beat Argentine qualifier Federico Augustin Gomez 6-4, 7-5, 6-7 and 6-2 in the first round. Now the fifth seed who reached the New York semi-finals just last year was playing his first singles match since Wimbledon in early July after suffering an arm injury. He's 23 years of age and is seen as one of the contenders for the title on his return to the scene of his breakout Grand Slam run. Well, that concludes your sports news. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Let's say good morning now to Buntle Headbush for the first time on this morning's edition of Africa Rise and Shine. She's got our business update.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning to you and our listeners this morning. In our top business story at this hour, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC, says nearly all pipeline theft has been eliminated after coordinated efforts by the country's defense and intelligence agencies. The state-owned firm Group Chief Executive Officer Bayo Ojulari says as little as 30% of oil sent through some pipelines made it to Nigeria's export terminals 3 years ago, costing the government billions in lost revenue and leading to investment being deferred. Pipeline and terminal receipts are now attaining close to 100%. The NNPC projects that as a result of this, Nigeria's oil output could surpass 2.5 million barrels per day by next year. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has launched a production booster kit program where small-scale farmers will receive at least $6,000 to help them develop up to 3 hectares. The booster facility is set to benefit 10,000 farmers who from the start did not benefit from various government input and loan schemes. Mnangagwa elaborates.
The Second Republic, in its people-centered development policies, leaves no one and no place behind. To guarantee inclusion of A1 farmers that did not benefit from the various irrigation schemes throughout the country, I am pleased today to announce the launch of the Productivity Booster Kit program. 10,000 A1 farmers will benefit under phase 1 of this program.
There's a strong call for Africa to leverage its mineral wealth for economic growth. This has emerged at the 2-day Africa Critical Minerals Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. The event brings together key stakeholders from across the continent focused on minerals diplomacy and the urgent need to ramp up the beneficiation of Africa's minerals. A central theme was the need for Africa to move beyond simply extracting and exporting raw materials. President of the Junior Mining Council, Fred Arendse.
Here we need to thank Donald Trump, the President of America, that has actually put a lot of pressure on Africa. And that actually actions everybody into high mode to see how best do we collaborate as a continent.
The Airports Company of South Africa, AXA, has more than doubled its profit after tax from $27 million to $63 million in the 2024-25 financial year. The financial performance will boost investor confidence and shows the state-owned company is firmly out of the COVID-19 slump. AXA Chief Executive Officer Mpumi Mpofu released the annual financial results in Kempton Park, Ekurhuleni.
We are just short in South Africa at 92% of meeting the 2019 figures.
And further afield, U.S. President Donald Trump says he's fired Federal Reserve Board member Dr. Lisa Cook, informing her in a letter posted publicly that she was hereby removed from her position effective immediately. The move is seen as part of White House efforts to assert more influence in the board's decision-making, including setting interest rates after much criticism directed at the bank by the president himself. Cook became the first black woman to sit on the central bank's board. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports that it's unclear if Trump has power to terminate members of the Federal Reserve.
Trump's letter accused Dr. Cook of deceitful and criminal conduct over an allegation asserting 2 properties as her primary residence in an effort to get favorable mortgage rates. Cook earlier said she would not be bullied into resigning and that she intended to take any questions about her financial history seriously as a member of the Federal Reserve and would gather accurate information to answer any legitimate questions and provide the facts. Trump said Cook's alleged conduct called into question her competence and trustworthiness as a financial regulator. Fed board members serve 14-year terms and can only be removed by the president for cause.
And now in our first look at the financial indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,528 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 29. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 11. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 13. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 41. Russia, 80 rubles 19. India, 87 rupees 50. China, it's 7 yuan 15. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 54 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,375 per ounce and platinum at $1,329 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $68.52 a barrel. And those are your business news this hour. I'll be back in the next hour with more. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hekbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
All right, our G20 fact for this morning is the G20 members represent about 85% of global gross domestic product, over 75% of the global trade, and about 2/3 of the world population. That's our G20 fact for this Tuesday, the 26th of August.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through
in times of complexity, exploring state capacity for agile public institutions. The event brought together leading scholars, public servants, policy makers, and governance experts to engage in timely reflections on the future of public institutions, particularly their ability to navigate complexity while remaining legitimate, agile, and focused on serving citizens. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe spoke with Bongani Maimele, who is Director of International Relations and Partnership at South Africa's National School of Governance.
The symposium went very well, and I think maybe I must also just give context as to why we have this symposium. This year, 2025, South Africa is the president to the G20, and as part of activities leading to the G20 summit that will be held later this year, there's a number of working groups focusing on different themes. And then also we have this group of research institutions, think tanks, policy experts that convene under what we call the Think 20. So as the NSG, together with the Institute of Global Dialogue, we convene this symposium today under this theme, exploring state capacity in times of complexity, in order to explore how we can build agile institutions. So that is the whole background.
What challenges around state capacity have been highlighted during the discussions, and how have participants proposed addressing them?
Well, the challenges that are confronting the state on one hand is the issue of capacity, technical skills. That one is an easy fix. You can fix skills through skills development, capacity building, etc. However, the other challenge that is confronting the state is the issue that I highlighted, the issue of uncertainty. So for the public service or public institutions to be responsive, they need to build, and I mean the symposium today highlighted that there's a need to build what we call anticipatory governance, foresighting capabilities. So you must govern in a way that you anticipate the future. Don't govern thinking for now. Your governance regime must be designed in a way that it is able to anticipate what is going to happen. And in that way, when you have foresight capabilities and you can anticipate, you are in a better position to plan and also not to be shocked, so that you can absorb the shocks because you have anticipated what is going to happen in the future. And those who anticipate basically is that they are able to reap opportunities and not only face challenges. You know this saying that you must turn challenges into opportunities. So the main thing that came from the symposium is that build capabilities for foresighting, capabilities for anticipatory governance. And the other issue also that came, which is very important, is the issue of governance, which was explored. It was recommended by the symposium that countries must actually promote governance systems that are suitable to their national conditions. What does this mean? It means that countries must not copy governance models or development models from other countries. They must do models that really work for them, models that are context-specific to their situations. There will not be a need for you, for example, to copy a model from a first world country and want to use it in a third world country. So governance and development must be context-specific to the national conditions, to the needs of the people, must take into account their culture. And in that way, you build an institute of effective governance that really work for the country and the people.
So you had one of your honored guests who delivered the keynote address by the name of Professor Zhang Weiwei, coming all the way from China as director of the China Institute of Fudan University. And here we are talking about international relations. What key messages or takeaways stood out from his contribution?
Yeah, Mike, as you may be aware, like most people are, currently China is the second biggest economy in the world. And China has achieved this miracle in about 40 years. And China was a very poor country. And what China did, and this is the lesson that comes from Professor Zhang Weiwei, is that state-led development is essential to achieving success. You cannot leave development to be dictated by the market. And if we're to bring that in the context of South Africa, there's what we call building a developmental state. This is a state that can participate in shaping the development trajectory of a country. So one thing that came out strongly, and actually it was central to the theme of this symposium, is building state capacity. And we've learned that China has achieved its successes because of state capacity. This state capacity has extended to different sectors. The state has invested in lots of research and development, which has made China to be one of the leading innovation countries or nations in the world. And through that innovation, China has been able to respond to shocks. Even COVID-19, it hit all of us. It never crippled the economy of China because the state has invested a lot in its own capacity to protect society and to protect its interests, and also invested a lot, like I said, in research and development, which today is being used to drive the economic growth of the People's Republic of China. And that economic growth is invested back to the development of the nation. That's why today we'll say in China, there's no more absolute poverty. Even if though there's poverty, but it is not absolute, it is 100% poverty. People live in what we call relative comfort. There are no people that live in absolute suffering. So that is what we have picked up, that innovation is the backbone of a nation, and you must continuously invest in state capacity and to continuously reform your system of governance. So how we governed in 1994, for example, cannot be the same as how we should govern in 2025.
That was Bongani Maimele, Director of International Relations and Partnership at South Africa's National School of Governance, speaking to Michael Mbewe.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Staying with South Africa, Operation Dudula is formally registered as a political party and plans to contest the 2026 municipal elections for the first time. The controversial South African interest group emerged in 2021 and is known for its campaigns highlighting the impact of undocumented migration on jobs, public services and community safety. Reporter Dimakatso Leshuru caught up with the leader of the group and filed this report.
Since its formation, Operation Dudula has been active in townships and urban centers, raising concerns about undocumented migration. Members have staged marches and campaigns, most recently focusing on access to public healthcare facilities. Leader Zandile Dabula says this organization's aim is to push government to strengthen border control and enforce immigration laws.
Operation Dudula is a fully fledged political party, and we have different pillars. There's nothing being xenophobic nor vigilantes because, we've been marching for the past 5 years, trying to get attention from the leaders. We've been raising these concerns for the past 5 years. Nobody's listened to us. We are saving our country. If we don't do it, then unfortunately nobody else can do it. We are the only ones that can save it now.
Dabula adds that the lack of enforcement, fueled by corruption and weakened governance, has necessitated the existence of the interest group.
The problem is that we do not have leaders currently. We are on autopilot. And foreigners are taking advantage of the lawlessness that's happening in our country. We're not saying we're blaming everything on them, but the fact that, we have laws, but nobody is enforcing these laws. They're taking advantage of the loopholes, and they have studied our laws. They know it better than, most South Africans. Even our law enforcers don't understand these laws. But also the corruption within our government. I mean, this chaos, definitely somebody's benefiting out of it.
Now registered as a political party, Operation Dudula says it will contest selected municipalities, including Johannesburg, Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and Sidibeng. Political analyst Dr. Levi Ndou says the group's grassroots mobilization could translate into electoral support.
They are going to be putting an emphasis on issues that will relate to illegal immigrants. And you would know that the Patriotic Alliance also got seats in the previous elections because of their slogan that says Abahambe. My view is that there could be a good relationship between Operation Dudula and the Patriotic Alliance.
Their campaigns have divided opinions amongst locals, with many in support of the group.
I support Operation Dudula. There's a fine thin line between an asylum seeker. Operation Dudula is not against asylum seekers. They are against illegal foreigners. And I think we know the history of what these people are doing. And they are here illegally. They do all sorts of wrong things. They take our benefits. If you go to hospitals, the queues are very long because it's people from Zimbabwe and other nearby foreign countries, including those that are far too. Those people are illegal here. They're stealing our IDs. They're stealing our identities. They are always in places that we should be there. They are killing us.
I honestly wouldn't vote for Dudula as a political party. I just feel they are very anti-black. They've got no regard for the constitution. They're anti-black. They're xenophobic. No clear leadership. They only speak foreigners and nothing to offer, that will benefit the well-being of all South Africans.
Despite the criticism and their meeting with the health minister to tone down operations at hospitals, Operation Dudula says it will continue its campaigns, including advocating for the employment of local doctors and ensuring schools prioritize South African children.
We are going to intensify because now we're going to include the doctors, unemployed doctors, because we have a lot of foreign doctors that are hired in these public healthcare facilities. So what we're going to do is I will be leading a campaign, an employment campaign, where we want to create about plus minus 250 jobs per week for South Africans. So we're going to be visiting restaurants, we will be visiting industrial places, making sure that we remove foreigners and we replace them with South Africans. Now, this is going to happen simultaneously with the education program because we will be stationed at schools come first week of Jan 2026, where we are saying that these are public facilities. Public schools are for South Africans and they need to be reserved for South Africans. If a foreigner needs a school, they need to go private. If they can't, go to private, and they are documented, then they need to come last. Until all South African kids are placed at schools, then they will be the last ones.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Seven o'clock Central African time it is, and we welcome you to now the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa as we're broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. Riding solo today. My colleague is not here, taking a break. And of course, in this hour, we'll be taking a look at violence in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado province, which has forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes. And we also take a look at Botswana, which has declared a public health emergency after hospitals and clinics across the country began running critically low on essential medicines. Those stories and more will be coming up. Let's find out what's happening in news first with Onele Nzinzi, and then we'll find out what's happening in sports just briefly with headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Botswana President Duma Boko has declared a state of public health emergency. This follows reports of a dire shortage of medicines at public clinics and hospitals. He has also announced that he has set up funds, which is equivalent to 6.5 billion rands to stabilize healthcare services in the country. Botswana Development Corporation has been tasked with the responsibility of leading that process. The corporation's managing director, Udeng Kiabetsu.
Over the last couple of days, a task team was formed to look at how do we stabilize provision of essential medical supplies to the people. And we requested for quotations on some of the missing critical items, and we received a quote from some of the local suppliers where the total amount proposed was about 780 million pula. The same list was shared with aggregates across the globe to see where we could land in terms of price. And we landed on average at about 80 million pula.
President Duma Boko has meanwhile announced on his X account that the first batch of medication has been dispatched from the capital Gaborone to the most remote villages. The court case launched by human rights lawyers and activists to challenge the government of Eswatini for making a secretive deal with President Donald Trump's administration to accept third country deportees from the U.S. will be back in court on the 25th of September. The applicants claim the deal is unconstitutional. Government failure to file response papers resulted in the postponement. In July, the U.S. deported 5 individuals to the Southern African country. All were convicted felons, and Eswatini says it is holding them in solitary confinement until they can be repatriated. The editor of Swaziland News, Zweli Martin Dlamini, says the human rights lawyers may have a strong case.
There is a prospect of success in this case if you look at it in the legal aspects, considering the fact that this agreement was signed secretly. Even cabinet was not involved. In fact, it was the Prime Minister of Eswatini who was collaborating or corresponding with the United States in signing this agreement. So there is a prospect of success. But as you understand, in Eswatini is an absolute monarchy. If the state or if the monarchy has an interest in this matter, we might maybe witness some other delays that seek to undermine the legal process.
South Africa's Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube says government is determined to build a quality education system to which all children can have access. She has emphasized the importance of ensuring a solid foundation to achieve optimum results. Gwarube was speaking at the G20 Basic Education National Indaba in Cape Town yesterday.
If we get the foundations of learning right, we won't obsess about whether or not children are taking maths and science when they get to matric. We won't obsess about the matric pass rate and whether we're hitting those notes, because that will already be set from the very foundations of learning.
Lastly, the international community has condemned Israel after its airstrikes hit a hospital in southern Gaza. 20 people, including 5 journalists, were killed in the attack, which happened yesterday. The UN has described the incident as horrific. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed deep regret, referring to the attack as a tragic mishap. Omar Shaki is from the region's Human Rights Watch.
We first and foremost need to recognize those that were killed, including journalists that were among the rare voices that we have into Gaza, because Israel has methodically blocked access to foreign journalists, with few exceptions, and has systematically killed journalists. CPJ, the Committee for the Protection of Journalists, has noted nearly 200 journalists killed in the context of these hostilities.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Mtsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the 100-meter African record holder Ferdinand Omanyala is set to miss this week's Diamond League final in Zurich and its semi-final day at the Chan 2024 tournament. Details coming up at 7:30.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So we have our question of the day. We invite you to get in touch with us on our social media platforms. Across all of them, our handle is @ChannelAfrica1 with your thoughts and answers on this. With this backdrop, Operation Dudula has formally registered a political party, or as a political party, and they plan to contest the 2026 municipal elections for the first time. The controversial South African interest group is known for its campaigns on the impact of undocumented migration in the country. We're asking, what do you make of this, that Operation Dudula is now a political party?
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Violence in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado province has forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes. Many are now living in makeshift camps, struggling for food, water and healthcare. Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, is on the ground providing emergency medical and humanitarian assistance. We're joined now by Marilia Oliveira, who is spokesperson for MSF in Mozambique, to discuss the scale of this crisis as well as MSF's response. Marilia, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Tuesday?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having us here and open this space to talk about Cabo Delgado.
It's our pleasure. Let's then start by you please describing for us what the situation in Cabo Delgado looks like right now for the displaced families.
Yeah, what the teams on the ground, what they are seeing is that the situation is very volatile. And what happened was by the end of July, a series of attacks happened in the south of the province, close to the border with Nampula province, so really towards the south. And this series of attacks kind of triggered a massive displacement, massive displacement. I think the official number says around 27,000, more than 27,000 people took refuge in Chiuri town. So what we saw was that those families, they were allocated in the temporary resettlement camps, and these camps, they were actually schools. It was like primary schools, so there was no condition for them to stay there. And that's when MSF started the emergency intervention, so we could really address the needs and try to prevent the spread of outbreaks, which was the main concerns of our teams. Now we start to see that many families started to go back to their homes, even though there's the fear of new conflicts, new attacks, and other families are then being moved to permanent resettlement camps in the region as well.
All right, so there's been some little improvement, I guess, then. And as MSF, you've launched your emergency response at the end of July. How have you seen that the services that you are providing in the temporary resettlement centers are improving the situation? Has there been, as you've been there since?
Yeah, we saw that many people could then have their checkups in our tents, in our medical tents. We understood that was the need was there even before this new series of attacks happen. For instance, out of the antenatal care consultations that our teams provided, we saw like a high number of first checkups. So this kind of highlights that the people didn't have access to healthcare even before. So we could address all these needs there. And also, I think one of the first things that came together with primary healthcare was improvements in water and sanitation solutions. So very quickly, we were able to install some water points, as we call, to distribute clean water to the camps. And also we did the installation of latrines that really create an environment that we can control waterborne disease, for instance, which are caused by not proper bathroom situation or dirty water, contaminated water.
International funding cuts have been reported. How does that affect your capacity to provide the life-saving assistance that you are there to?
Yeah, Doctors Without Borders, MSF, as our French acronym, as we are known by our French acronym. We are a medical humanitarian organization independent, which means that, for instance, in 2024, 98% of our funds came from private donors. So we are not directly affected by the international funding cuts, but our part, like the other organizations, the other actors present in Cabo Delgado are. So what we are seeing is that the capacity of the other actors to react to this emergency is very limited. And this emergency, it's really big. It's not something that one organization can handle by itself. So of course, in our fundings, we are not affected, but we are seeing that in the context that we work on, we are left really like without other actors to support the communities as well.
Are there particular groups, either children or pregnant women or the elderly, that are facing greater risks? And how, as MSF, are you able to meet or try and meet their needs?
Yeah, I think when we talk about these people, our biggest concern, MSF's biggest concern, is to really continue the care. The continuity of care, it's what is jeopardized when we have to halt our outreach activities or halt of our operations because of lack of security. So, for instance, one of the stories that the staff shared with me is this pregnant woman that she was very advanced in her pregnancy. She had to run away when the attacks happened. She stayed, I think, 3 days walking to find refuge. And by the time she found she was reallocated to this resettlement center, our teams were able to identify that she was at risk. She was at risk of having some complications in her delivery or even in the end of her pregnancy. So together with the organizations who were present in registering the family, we were able to connect them, and then we were able to move this pregnant woman to what they call the mother's house, which is a house from the Ministry of Health that can welcome women that are at risk of having a risky delivery outside of the hospital. So I think these small actions is what we can do to really prevent that the worst happen, honestly.
Right. Marilia, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you for giving us this update, and thanks for all the work you're doing as MSF there in Mozambique.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having this space to talk about our operations here in Mozambique.
No pleasure. Marilia Oliveira is a spokesperson for Doctors Without Borders in Mozambique, giving us a first-hand look at the humanitarian crisis in Cabo Delgado and the emergency response efforts on the ground.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's go to Botswana now, where the country has declared a public health emergency after hospitals and clinics across the country began running critically low on essential medicines and medical supplies. President Duma Boko has said the national medical supply chain has failed, and the military is now overseeing emergency distribution to ensure drugs reach remote areas. So we're going to get into this conversation to understand the scale of the crisis, its impact on patients and the government's response, and we'll be speaking to Channel Africa's correspondent Shingerai Madondo as we try to get a hold of him in this moment. Let's just repeat the question of the day, and this is what we'd love to hear from you on our social media platforms. You can connect with us at Channel Africa 1. That is on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, as well as LinkedIn. And the question is around Operation Tudula, which has formally now registered as a political party, and they are planning to contest the 2026 municipal elections for the first time. This South African interest group is known for its campaigns that highlight the impact of undocumented migration on the country as it pertains to how it affects jobs, public services, and community safety. So the question for this 26th of August is what do you make of Operation Tudula, formally registering as a political party?
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So let's touch on that Botswana story now as we connect with Shingerai Madondo, Channel Africa's correspondent from Gaborone there, joining us to unpack the impact on patients and the government's response as far as public health emergency that's been declared there after hospitals and clinics are running critically low on essential medicine. Shingerai, thanks for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
I'm very good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. So can you paint a picture then of what's happening there in Botswana's hospitals and clinics right now? Are people being turned away as well?
Basically, this started almost a month or so ago, whereby the officials or the health authorities here were complaining about a non-availability of essential, or rather than almost all medicals in this particular republic, and people were started to be turning back. And 3 weeks ago, the Minister of Health, Dr. Mudise, was actually in Parliament addressing parliamentarians and the nation about the non-availability of these critical and essential medicals in our health facilities. And this has resulted in many people being turned away and many people not being booked for operations that they deem more necessary. And this has actually derailed into a critical situation that resulted in their President Duma Boko declaring a public health emergency yesterday.
Are there particular medicines and supplies that are running out the fastest, and who is feeling the impact the most?
Almost everybody is feeling the impact in this particular republic, but mostly the poor and the vulnerable, looking at the fact that they don't have the financial capacity to actually go down to the private sector to actually get this particular medical attention that they so desire. And this has resulted in many of the people actually resorting to what they call traditional medicines, but some are saying this is not working, but some are saying it's working. So looking at the fact that the government also is actually saying that it doesn't have the financial power to support the system or the situation or the process that used to be there, whereby the members of the public were referred to private players in the health sector to get the essential or the needful operations or surgeries that they were looking for. So it's saying it's almost over $1 billion pull that resulted in them not getting into the referring patients to the private players.
Another alternative is the president having called for the military to oversee emergency distribution. Has that started, and is it making a difference on the ground as you see it?
This was actually declared yesterday, whereby the military and other members within the Botswana Defence Forces are expected to be part and parcel of the health sector that is currently in its sickbed. So this was declared yesterday, but to say on the ground, if things started to move, it is yet to be realized. But what they are trying to do is looking at the fact that in the military we have got medical doctors, we have got nurses, we have got other, medical personnel that actually come into fore. So what is going to be happening here, looking at the fact that the Botswana Doctors Union has been threatening to actually go on strike. So these are the people that have been actually put on standby to make sure that whatever eventuality that comes on board, they will come and actually try to solve the situation. And this is the situation whereby the Botswana Defence Force Commander Replacedi Sehoku is actually leading that particular team that is running around, or a technical team that has been set as it was announced yesterday when he declared the public health emergency. Is the one leading that particular team to make sure that everything is actually put in place and everything is in order.
How much of this crisis in Botswana can be attributed to international aid cuts?
To be honest, we cannot say this can be attributed to the U.S. Or the international aid cut that has been implemented by other countries like your United States and other countries. But I can tell you, this was a mere, corrupt actions that have been done. And as President Boko alluded to yesterday, there is a department that is called Central Medical Stores, and it's commonly known as CMS, where this has been an organization that was responsible for actually ordering or to buy medicals for the country. And this is where he said there were a lot of corrupt activities that were happening, looking at the fact that there were some sort of medicines that were being procured at a 5 times or 10 times more than the normal price on the international market. And this was mainly to actually enrich themselves. And he asked this question yesterday: did this action did actually, create employment as much as the previous government was saying, to say they are bringing middlemen to actually create employment opportunities for Botswana? He rhetorically also answered that, saying to him there was no employment creation, looking at the staggering unemployment rates that are actually happening in the country, looking at the fact that 27.5 to 40% are said to be not employed. So he said there were a lot of corrupt activities and has led to this particular point where we are.
Shingarai, thank you for this update. We appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shingarai Matondo is Channel Africa's correspondent, coming to us live from Gaborone in Botswana, reporting on the public health emergency that's been declared in the country as there's a critical shortage in hospitals and clinics of medicines.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Health ministers from 47 African countries are meeting in Lusaka, Zambia, for the 75th session of the World Health Organization, or WHO, Regional Committee for Africa. One of the key items on the agenda is the endorsement of the regional strategy to strengthen rehabilitation in health systems 2025-2035. Joining us now from Zambia is Dr. Chiara Retis, who is team lead for the Violence, Injuries and Disability Unit at the WHO Regional Office for Africa. Dr. Retis, thank you for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So now that the Lusaka session has started, why is rehabilitation such a pressing issue for Africa?
Thank you for the question. So in Africa, it is estimated that over 210 million people are in need of rehabilitation services due to various conditions. And this number is increasing due to the population aging and also due to the lifestyle changes in the continent that lead to more chronic conditions and non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. There are also still a high number, of course, of people affected by communicable diseases like measles, polio, and other outbreaks that come with some complications sometimes and long-lasting impairment. And also, there is a high prevalence of injuries in Africa, for example, due to road crashes, but also to violence. So, all these conditions can cause a loss of physical and psychological functions. And this is where rehabilitation comes as a useful service. So we are talking about 1 out of 5 people in the continent, from children to adults and older people.
At this session, health ministers are endorsing the 2025-2023 regional strategy for rehabilitation. How will this strategy change access to services?
So the strategy gives a lot of emphasis to political commitment, so asking member states to improve, strengthen national policies around rehabilitation, allocation of resources to integrate these services at all levels of care. And so this requires also efforts to strengthen capacities of the workforce at all levels of care, from the community to the specialized hospitals, for example, and to improve the availability of data so that needs can be tracked and the response can be designed accordingly in all countries. And of course, more research and more innovation.
What role will the governments and communities play then in making this strategy a success?
So the government, as we said, they need to make efforts to design policies that integrate rehabilitation and to invest in developing such services. They need to do this in collaboration, of course, with other sectors, with social welfare, and with civil society organizations in the continent. Currently, there are a lot of community-based organizations who are close to individuals who need rehabilitation, people with disabilities, and that do a lot of work already in the ground. But it is these two levels, so the grassroots and institutions, need to come together and work together to increase timely access to rehabilitation for all in an affordable manner.
So what key message would you like African communities to take away then about the importance of rehabilitation? I know you touch on one of the barriers or contributing factors to this not getting as much attention as it does is that the population, the aging population, is increasing on the country, and we know that a majority of our population is young people, so maybe governments might not take it as seriously. But what message would you send to African governments on rehabilitation and how this needs to be taken seriously?
Rehabilitation is a set of services and that can really improve the functioning of people. So becoming again active member of the society, regaining autonomy, and also recovering dignity as active member of society. So politicians and ministries of health should really understand that yes, we do need to work on reducing mortality, reducing morbidity, so health conditions they make us sick, but also we need to make sure that people thrive and that they have a good quality of life despite the presence of an impairment.
Dr. Retis, thank you so much again for your insights and for educating us on an important matter. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Chiara Retis from the World Health Organization's Regional Office for Africa, emphasizing the importance of rehabilitation within health systems and how this needs to be strengthened on regional and continental level strategies. It's just gone, or just before 7:30 Central African time. Let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi with news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Botswana has declared a public health emergency after hospitals and clinics across the country began running critically low on essential medicines and medical supplies. The court case launched by human rights lawyers and activists to challenge the government of Eswatini for making a secretive deal with President Donald Trump's administration to accept that country deportees from the U.S. will be back in court on the 25th of September. And the French Prime Minister François Bayrou has called a vote of confidence as the government tries to cut public spending and reduce the number of public holidays by 2. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's catch up with the world of sports as we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the sports desk. Ferdinand Omanyala, who holds the African 100-meter record, is injured and is now pulled out of this week's Diamond League final in Zurich, Switzerland, the last event before the Tokyo World Championships. Now, the 29-year-old is one of 17 Kenyans who have qualified for Zurich, where the globe's top athletes will compete on Wednesday as well as Thursday. Omanyala, who is set the African 100-meter male record of 9.77 seconds in September of 2021, was selected at the Kenyan trials in July as the country's only male entrant in the 100-meter event at Tokyo. He has, though, struggled to find his winning form in the Diamond League this season. Meanwhile, Faith Kipyegon, the three-time world 1,500-meter champion, as well as the 10,000-meter champion Beatrice Chebet, will be competing as well in Switzerland. They will join the Olympic 800-meter champion, as well as the Diamond League winner Emmanuel Wayoni, who has choked up 4 wins with the fastest times this season. In football news now, today will provide the first ever meeting between Morocco as well as Senegal at the Total Energies Chan tournament, where they will clash in the semi-finals in Kampala, Uganda. It also brings together the winners of the last 3 editions. So Morocco were champions back in 2018 and in 2020, up against now the defending champions, Senegal, champions of course from 2022. Morocco will face West African opposition for the 9th time at a Chan tournament. They have those struggles initially, failing to win any of their first 3 encounters, drawing to Burkina Faso and then losing to Nigeria in 2024 and then to Cote d'Ivoire in 2026, or rather 2016. Since then, they have also won 5 in a row, including an emphatic victories against the likes of Mauritania, Nigeria. There was also Guinea, Togo, as well as Mali. Senegal, meanwhile, will face North African opposition only for a 3rd time. They lost 2-0 to Tunisia back in 2011 before beating Algeria on penalties in 2022 in that final. After a goalless draw, they are yet to score against North African opponents in open play. Meanwhile, Madagascar as well as Sudan will meet for the very first time in the final of the Chan tournament when they clash in the last 4 in Dar es Salaam later on tonight. Now, this is the second meeting between Madagascar as well as Sudan at a Chan tournament. Their first clash came in the group stages back in 2022 in a 3-team group that also included the likes of Ghana. Madagascar won that decisive encounter by 3-0 to advance to advance as the group winners alongside Ghana. For Sudan, this will be their 3rd match against Southern African opposition. They previously defeated Zambia in the 2018 quarterfinals, but then went on to lose to Madagascar in the group stages of the 2022 event. In tennis news now, Venus Williams battled bravely before bowing out of the US Open on her return to Grand Slam tennis on Monday in Melbourne as champion Madison Keys suffered a shock first-round exit. Now, the second full day of action in New York also saw all eyes turn to the Arthur Ashe Stadium in the night session where the 45-year-old Williams lost in 3 sets to the 11th seed Karolina Muchova. Williams only returned to competitive tennis in July following a 16-month absence from the sport and has also been granted a wild card into the main draw at Flushing Meadows. But hopes of a fairy tale run 28 years after her debut in the tournament back in 1997 ended in a 6-3, 2-6 and a 6-1 loss to Muchova, who was not even born when Williams turned professional back in 1994. Despite that defeat, Williams says she's proud of her performance.
Yeah, I definitely had a bit of a slow start, but it's not really a bad thing. I just haven't played a lot of matches, so I'm still finding, everything. I think I had a low 40 game, and I was like, oh no, not a double break. So thankfully that was avoided, at least in that set. And, I was really able to start to dial into my game, and I didn't win today, but I'm very proud of how I played.
Now, at the same time, we saw Madison Keys also being defeated in the first round yesterday. Of course, he was the Australian Open champion. She says she never got her nerves right in that encounter and that surprise defeat to the world number 82 Renata Zarazui in the US Open first round. 6-seed Keys, competing in New York for the first time since becoming a Grand Slam champion, put in an error-strewn performance in a 6-7, a 7-6 and a 7-5 defeat by the Mexican. Now, the American also made 89 unforced errors, hit 14 double faults and also saved just 4 of the 10 break points that she faced in that match. Keys also started the year in superb fashion, beating the two-time defending champion Aryna Sabalenka in Melbourne to win in the her first ever Grand Slam title. But after reaching the quarterfinals of the French Open, the 30-year-old suffered a surprise third-round Wimbledon exit to the 37-year-old Laura Sigmund. And this is what she had to say following her defeat in the early hours of this morning.
My nerves really got the better of me, and it kind of became a little bit paralyzing. I felt like I was just slow. I wasn't seeing things the way that I wanted to, which I feel like resulted in a lot of bad decisions and lazy footwork. So I feel like that's kind of the summary.
Right, so that concludes the Sports News this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update for Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makure.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Now let's check in with the world of business as we say good morning again to Buntle Headbush with the economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning. In our top business story at this hour, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC, says nearly all pipeline theft has been eliminated after coordinated efforts by the country's defense and intelligence agencies. The state oil firm group chief executive officer, Bayo Ojulari, says as little as 30% of oil sent through some pipelines made it to Nigeria's export terminals 3 years ago, costing the government billions in lost revenue and leading to investment investment being deferred. Pipeline and terminal receipts are now attaining close to 100%. The NNPC projects that as a result of this, Nigeria's oil output could surpass 2.5 million barrels per day next year. 6 main trade unions in Botswana have given the President Duma Boko-led administration until the 30th of September this year to address some critical issues affecting the cordial relationship between the employer and employees. In a petition delivered yesterday, the workers noted with serious concern that the 2025-26 negotiations have stalled due to poor leadership on the side of government. The unions are demanding the redeployment, if not removal, of the permanent secretary to President Duma Boko, Emma Pulwetlitse, and the director at the Directorate of Public Service Management, Gaone Macholo, arguing that they are acting in bad faith. Secretary General at the Botswana Public Employees Union explains.
The labor relations under her watch have deteriorated this mainly as she is the orchestrator of the divide and rule tactic, something which we consider and view, and we further do not tolerate as the new government. Unfair and unbiased recruitment, which is tantamount to nepotism, under her watch, government negotiation team has engaged in the process of falsifying records or minutes of the 2025-26 salary negotiations.
Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has launched a production booster kit program where small-scale farmers will receive at least $6,000 to help them develop up to 3 hectares. The booster facility is set to benefit 10,000 farmers who from the start did not benefit from various government input and loan schemes. Mnangagwa elaborates.
The Second Republic, in its people-centered development policies, leaves no one and no place behind. To guarantee inclusion of A1 farmers that did not benefit from the various irrigation schemes throughout the country, I am pleased today to announce the launch of the Productivity Booster Kit program. 10,000 A1 farmers will benefit under phase 1 of this program.
The Chinese ambassador in South Africa, Wu Peng, says Beijing will continue to deepen its bilateral ties with Pretoria. He took part in a seminar in Pretoria that seeks to enhance global trade cooperation amid rising protectionism. The world is anxiously following the sweeping tariffs imposed by the U.S. Peng says the tariffs have negatively affected the global economy.
This is a terrible tariff environment. However, I attend today's conference. The main message I send out to South African audience is that I believe the resilience of South Africa economy. Yes, the tariff dispute actually is not formidable, and our life will go on.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says he's fired Federal Reserve Board member Dr. Lisa Cook, informing her in a letter posted publicly that she was hereby removed from her position effective immediately. The move is seen as part of White House efforts to assert more influence in the board's decision-making, including setting interest rates after much criticism directed at the bank by the president himself. Cook became the first black woman to sit on the central bank's board. Sherwin Bryce-Peace reports that it's unclear if Trump has power to terminate board members of the Federal Reserve.
Trump's letter accused Dr. Cook of deceitful and criminal conduct over an allegation asserting 2 properties as her primary residence in an effort to get favorable mortgage rates. Cook earlier said she would not be bullied into resigning and that she intended to take any questions about her financial history seriously as a member of the Federal Reserve and would gather accurate information to answer any legitimate questions and provide the facts. Trump said Cook's alleged conduct called into question her competence and trustworthiness as a financial regulator. Fed board members serve 14-year terms and can only be removed by the president for cause.
And now take a look at the indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,528 naira. In Botswana, it's 13.29. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 11. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 13. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 41. Russia, 80 rubles 19. And India, it's 87 rupees 50. China is 7 yuan 15, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 54 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,375 per ounce, and platinum at $1,329 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.52 a barrel this morning. And those are your business news. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
So when you think of African music, you think of Kwasa Kwasa, high life music from West Africa, Afrobeat from West Africa, of gospel music or faith music or spiritual music. But when we think of reggae music, we go to the Caribbean, and if it's Africa, we only think about Lucky Dube. Well, I'm here to introduce you to some reggae music from Africa. Salif Keita with Dakan Fair from Mali. And I must say, this one was a real shock for me because I never had imagined Salif Keita on a reggae beat. But listening to him, it just proved to me how versatile he is as an artist, because you'd be expecting him to be on that vibe of West Africa, of ballads. But he really proved that he is very versatile, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has launched a production booster kit program where small-scale farmers will receive at least $6,000 to repay over the next 10 years. The booster facility is said to benefit 10,000 farmers who from the start did not benefit from various government input and loan schemes. John Kassim reports from Zimbabwe.
The Second Republic, in its people-centered development policies, leaves no one and no place behind. To guarantee inclusion of A1 farmers that did not benefit from the various irrigation schemes throughout the country, I am pleased today to announce the launch of the Productivity Booster Kit Program. 10,000 A1 farmers will benefit under phase 1 of this program.
That was Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa while in Mazoe, north of the capital, where he launched the National Production Booster Kits for A2 farmers. At least 10,000 farmers countrywide will receive the loans that will enhance their production on farms under these initiatives. The program is aimed at transforming rural agriculture from the traditional subsistence farming to commercial farming. The booster kits facility comes with $6,000 loan facility that will be repaid over a 10-year period. Meanwhile, the initiative is very important as it is targeting farmers who received between 1 to 3 hectares of land during the redistribution program. These are small-scale farmers and were not included in other government initiatives such as tractors and livestock stocking programs, Mnangagwa said.
Under this initiative, each farmer is said to get a loan of 6,000 US dollars. That money is for purchasing productivity booster kits to irrigate between 1 up to 3 hectares. My government plans to allocate 1.98 billion American dollars over 10 years as a loan for the productivity booster kit program. Additionally, 5 banks have committed to provide additional working capital.
Meanwhile, Zimbabwe has embarked on a number of climate-smart agriculture initiatives. These interventions are at 2 levels, beginning at the household level with the Sustainable Intensive Conservation Agriculture Model, popularly known as Pfumvudza in Twasa. This has been widely adopted and is helped to bolster food security as it is complemented by matching of specific crops to the respective agroecological regions of the country. While the country targets to put 496,000 hectares of land under irrigation, currently 222,000 has been achieved, a remarkable 27% increase from 2019. Meanwhile, in 2024, Zimbabwe began issuing title deeds as a more secure tenure for A1 and A2 farmers. This will enable many farmers to access affordable financing towards increased production, mechanization, and on-farm infrastructure development. John Kasim in Harare, Zimbabwe for Channel Africa News.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's take a look at this story now, also around health matters. Rising global temperatures are not only reshaping our climate, but also our workplaces. A new joint report from the World Health Organization and the World Meteorological Organization warns that excessive heat is now one of the most pressing occupational health risks worldwide. For the first time since 1969, the WHO has updated its guidance on workplace heat stress, an issue made more urgent by record-breaking heat waves and climate change. To unpack these findings and their implications, we're joined by Dr. Ivan Ivanov, lead of the Occupational and Workplace Health Program at the World Health Organization. Dr. Ivanov, thank you so much for joining us. How are you on this Tuesday?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. Best regards from Zanzibar.
Great.
It might be warmer than Johannesburg, but yeah, still cold season. But there is heat. The heat is still here.
Right.
Yes, and thank you very much for inviting me to join your emission. Africa is getting through major problems concerning heat and climate change in general. The last decade was the warmest decade for Africa. And many countries in Africa have experienced more than 90 days of extreme heat over the last decade compared to the previous decade. So this is a concern. North Africa is warming at the fastest range.
And this is the first update on workplace heat stress guidance since 1969. We often celebrate it when the warm weather comes, but there are also challenges to it if it becomes excessive. So what are the other key findings that you have noted?
Well, first, that we do not wait for the warm weather to come. We get prepared. And this is the major message of this report. Workplaces, communities should be prepared well in advance with occupational heat action plans that should also include measures on how to assess the heat stress, at what time, at what point to start activating the emergency measures to act against heat stress when there is a heat wave. However, there are workplaces where workers are exposed to heat outside of the heat waves, for example, in the mines, for example, in the foundries where there is melted metal, many cases in agriculture also. So it is important to be prepared, particularly workplaces, enterprises, plantations that may experience heat stress. They have to be prepared how to assess the heat stress, how to introduce technical measures to prevent, for example, shade, for example, cooling devices, how to organize the time, the work time, the work process so that it doesn't happen in the middle of the day when it is extremely hot, how to train the workers, how to be prepared to act in case of a heat illness or injury. That is the new aspects of this report compared to 1969. The climate has made a major difference.
Are there particular sectors or regions that are most affected? Coming to mind is, I guess, those who work outside in the farming communities or agriculture, maybe?
Definitely, agriculture is one of the sectors that is heavily affected. Also, construction. Construction is, in principle, very dangerous sector, but heat leads to heat syncope. People just faint, and it is a natural reaction of the body when the blood goes into the periphery of the body, and then the brain gets a little less blood, so people faint just to get horizontal position. But if you faint from the scaffolding up there on the construction site, that means death.
Absolutely. It's an urgent
Other also.
Yes, continue.
Other sectors that are heavily affected is, for example, healthcare. Sometimes working in full personal protective equipment like a coverall that we used during the Ebola outbreaks, sometimes it was used also during the COVID. It is basically like working in a sauna. It causes a lot of heat, it causes a lot of sweating, and it is exhausting. Other examples can be, for example, pressing, where the people use irons and a lot of humidity. Any kind of work environments that have a lot of humidity also are prone to heat stress.
In what ways exactly then does productivity on the part of workers get affected with heat stress?
Heat has been demonstrated to reduce productivity. For every degree above the 20 wet bulb globe temperature index, which is a combination of air temperature, air flow, humidity, and radiant heat, for every increase, every great increase of that, it is by 2 to 3%. So you manage, you can imagine, for example, agriculture, how it gets affected. People are less productive, but also the cows, they give less milk, the crops give less harvest, so it affects everything. Construction also, other people working in greenhouses, even people working indoors but without air conditioning. That is also reducing productivity, and it's leading to errors, mistakes. That is also hitting the economy.
Well, looking ahead, Doctor, we see that this is going to be an urgent thing that needs to be taken action on, also given the rise in global temperatures that you cite. But what role should international collaboration play then in advancing this?
The role of international collaboration is first to raise awareness. Many people in Africa think, oh, we're used to the heat. We are used to the heat. We know how to hold the heat. We know how to deal with the heat. Yes, that is true. But we have totally new ways of working, totally new Industries are coming to the region. Absolutely, this is not the hundreds of years of traditions that we have with the heat. We have also new constructions. We have totally new measures. And it is important to get prepared. It is important to provide clean air, to provide safe drinking water, to provide shade, to provide emergency support to all workers who work out there and those who are working indoors and who might be exposed to heat.
All right.
International collaboration is also very important to promote the exchange of good practices. For example, South Africa is a champion in dealing with occupational heat. The government and even the president of South Africa have championed measures on dealing with heat, starting from national heat alerts, then heat action plans for employers, recommendations. So there are a lot of things that South Africa can share with other countries. But the context differ. One is the climate in South Africa, another is the climate here in Zanzibar, in Tanzania. Totally different is the climate
So the
in
strategies
Morocco.
will need to be unique.
So that
Dr.
is,
Ivanov, we're completely out of time, and I thank you again for your time and for joining us there in Tanzania, Zanzibar. Dr. Ivanov is lead of the Occupational and Workplace Health Program at the World Health Organization, talking about the importance of zooming into heat stress and how it impacts on workers' health and productivity. 8 o'clock Central African time it is. Let's get our news update. Here's Onele Nzinzi, and then we'll have sports with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Sanda. Botswana President Duma Boko has declared a state of public health emergency. This follows reports of a dire shortage of medicines at public clinics and hospitals. He's also announced that he has set up just over $368 million to stabilize healthcare services in the country. Botswana Development Corporation has been tasked with the responsibility of leading that process. The corporation's managing director, Udeng Kiabetsu.
Over the last couple of days, a task team was formed to look at how do we stabilize provision of essential medical supplies to the people. And we requested for quotations on some of the missing critical items, and we received a quote from some of the local suppliers where the total amount proposed was about 780 million pula. The same list was shared with aggregates across the globe to see where we could land in terms of price. And we landed on average at about 80 million pula.
President Duma Boko has meanwhile announced on his X account that the first batch of medication has been dispatched from the capital Gaborone to the most remote villages. The court case launched by human rights lawyers and activists to challenge the government of Eswatini for making a secretive deal with President Donald Trump's administration to accept third country deportees from the U.S. will be back in court on the 25th of September. The applicants claim the deal is unconstitutional. Government's failure to file response papers resulted in the postponement. All were convicted felons, and Eswatini says it is holding them in solitary confinement until they can be repatriated. The editor of Swaziland News, Zweli Martin Mdlamini, says human rights lawyers may have a strong case.
There is a prospect of success in this case if you look at it in the legal aspects, considering the fact that this agreement was signed secretly. Even cabinet was not involved. In fact, it was the Prime Minister of Eswatini who was collaborating or corresponding with the United States in signing this agreement. So there is a prospect of success. But as you understand, in Eswatini is an absolute monarchy. If the state or if the monarchy has an interest in this matter, we might maybe witness some other delays that seek to undermine the legal process.
South Africa's Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube says government is determined to build a quality education system to which all children have access. She has emphasized the importance of ensuring a solid foundation to achieve optimum results. Gwarube was speaking at the G20 Basic Education National Indaba in Cape Town yesterday.
If we get the foundations of learning right, we won't obsess about whether or not children are taking maths and science when they get to matric. We won't obsess about the matric pass rate and whether we're hitting those notes, because that will already be set from the very foundations of learning.
Lastly, the French Prime Minister, François Bayrou, has called a vote of confidence as the government tries to cut public spending and reduce the number of public holidays by 2. Bayrou appeals to members of parliament to support his planned budget.
Un danger immédiat pèse sur nous.
An immediate danger looms over us, which we must face, not tomorrow or the day after, but today, without any delay. Otherwise the future will be forbidden to us, and the present harshly and severely worsened. Our country is in danger because we're at risk of being in too much debt.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Venus Williams unsure of her future following a first-round exit at the US Open in the early hours of this morning. And we'll also take a look at the Chan tournament entering the semi-final stages later on tonight. Details coming up at 8:30.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
At least 20 people, including 5 journalists, were killed when an Israeli military struck the Nasser hospital complex in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip, drawing swift condemnation from the United Nations Secretary General. The journalists are from Reuters, the Associated Press and Al Jazeera, among others. Reports from the region suggest 2 strikes by the Israelis on the hospital, the second taking out rescue workers and medics who had rushed to the scene in response to the aftermath of the first strike. While the number of journalists killed in the Gaza war vary, the Committee to Protect Journalists says at least 192 have died, while the Gaza Government Media Office puts that figure at above 240. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
Rescue and media workers, some holding up camera equipment, salvaged from the debris caused by the first strike. Civil defense workers moving a deceased individual in a body bag as a second strike targets the same area. A death toll rising to above 62,000, injuries in excess of 150,000. Days after the UN-backed Integrated Food Security Phase classification confirmed widespread famine in Gaza. Palestinian Foreign Minister Varsin Agabekian.
More than 250 Palestinians have lost their lives because of starvation. And today, journalists, your colleagues, we have 240 of your colleagues who have been brutally killed in Gaza. And that number exceeds the number of journalists killed in World War II and onwards, in all the wars in modern history. Today, 80% of Gaza is in shambles. And we will only know the extent of devastation, the extent of the killing and the injuries once we are able to assess on the ground.
The latest 5 journalists killed include Hussam al-Masri, who worked as a photojournalist for the Reuters news agency, Mariam Abu Dakar, who worked with the Associated Press, among others. Moaz Abu Taha was a freelance journalist, Ahmed Abu Aziz of the Quds Feed Network, and Mohammed Salama, an Al Jazeera camera operator, among the 20 people killed in the hospital strike. Listen to the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric.
The Secretary General strongly condemns
the killings of Palestinians today in Israeli strikes that hit Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. Those killed, in addition to civilians, included medical personnel and journalists. We want to extend our condolences to families and colleagues of those journalists killed, especially those representative of the Associated Press, Reuters, and Al Jazeera who are in this room or online. These latest horrific killings highlight the extreme risks that medical personnel and journalists face as they carry out their vital work amidst this brutal conflict. The Secretary General recalls that civilians, including medical personnel and journalists, must be respected and protected at all times. He calls for a prompt, impartial investigation into these killings. He reiterates that medical personnel and journalists must be able to perform their essential duties without interference, without intimidation, and without harm, and in full accordance with international humanitarian law.
Israel's foreign ministry later confirmed the strikes on Nasser, adding that the chief of the general staff had instructed an initial inquiry and that the IDF regretted any harm to individuals, adding that it does not target journalists. But media rights group Reporters Without Borders lamented just the latest attack. Listen to its Director General, Thibaut Brutin.
When and where is it going to end? Are we going to let the Israel Defense Forces continue the repeated killing of journalists? There is international law. There are guarantees that should be granted to journalists covering conflicts. And none of that seems to be applying. So we need to be very clear about the fact that none of the journalists that are allegedly terrorists are terrorists. They are professional journalists working for legacy professional media, like, for example, Reuters or, for example, AP. A suicide drone hit the third floor of the hospital, and this third floor was reputedly known for being a space where journalists work. So there is already a first indication that it might have been a targeted strike.
This as Israel's military, including planes and tanks, are reported to have pounded the eastern and northern parts of Gaza City over the weekend, as an awaiting military escalation in the decimated enclave began to take shape. This amid warnings from the UN and others that 500 million people were now trapped in a famine marked by widespread starvation, destitution and preventable deaths, as Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Tom Fletcher explained.
It is a famine, the Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. Yet food stacks up at borders because of systematic obstruction by Israel.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres on Friday also said there were no longer words to describe the living hell in Gaza, referring to the famine there as a man-made disaster. He reminded Israel that as an occupying power it had unequivocal obligations under international law, including a duty to ensure food and medical supplies of the population, adding that the situation could not be allowed to continue with impunity. He said the time for action was now, reiterating his call for an immediate ceasefire, an immediate release of all hostages, and full, unfettered humanitarian access into Gaza. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The African National Congress political party, ANC veteran and South Africa's former government minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, has warned party members that the ANC has lost its glory. Dr. Pandor's comments follow the party's drop to below 50% in last year's national elections. The 2026 local government elections are also expected to be a highly contested affair for the party. Pandor attended a memorial lecture for struggle stalwart Gertrude Shope in the capital city, Pretoria, on Sunday. Sibahle Mota filed this report.
A befitting commemorative lecture for the late struggle stalwart Mayor Gertrude Shope. The ANC Women's League commemorated the late struggle stalwart in Acacia, Pretoria. Meshope, a recipient of the Order of Isithalandwe, would have turned 100 this month. ANC veteran Dr. Naledi Pandor described Meshope as a leading force in the women's movement.
She had a look which stressed, I can cope with whatever is sent my way. That is the kind of strength that is urgently necessary today.
The former government minister also used the memorial lecture to warn the ANC, saying the party has lost its glory. Pandor says public officials have forgotten that they exist to serve the people.
And we have lost our glory. Let's not pretend about it. We have lost it. The people are looking at us with disdain. The people are looking at us with horror and shame. So we have work to do to restore the glory.
Dr. Pandor has also stressed the need for the ANC to scrutinize all leaders it has placed in positions of power.
We have forgotten that we exist to serve the people, that we exist for the people. We need to bring that back by scrutinizing very carefully the leaders that we affirm, and by ensuring that if our leaders fail at their duty, whatever position they occupy, we will hold them to account.
This while ANC Deputy Secretary General Nomvula Mokonyana emphasized the need for more women to occupy strategic positions. She says it's high time the women in the party should lead metropolitan municipalities not only as speakers but as mayors to honor Meshope.
To make women to be honest like Meshope, in defending and speaking truth to power within the ANC, and to also decide that you can lead the ANC yourselves, and to also decide that we shall have mayors and not speakers only in the coming local government elections. To commit that metropolitan municipalities are not the domain of men, le rona re batho.
Meshope, who passed away in May this year, would have turned 100 years on the 15th of August. I am Sibahle Mota in Pretoria.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Just gone after 15 minutes past 8 o'clock Central African time, and we continue with this story on the ANC. And the ANC veteran saying the party must scrutinize all leaders that are placed in positions of power. She's the latest senior party member who says the party leaders have forgotten that they have been voted into the positions to serve the people of South Africa. So let's discuss this further as we joined now on the line by Sandile Swana, who is a political analyst. Sandile, thank you for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
Jolly good. Good morning to the listeners of Channel Africa. Thank you very much.
ANC veteran Naledi Pandor made her remarks as she paid tribute to the late Gertrude Shope, saying people view the African National Congress political party in the country with disdain, horror and shame. What do you make of her words in terms of how they will affect the political party?
These words, may not affect the political party in any significant way, given that already in 1995, Mandela had indicated clearly that the people who have joined the ANC and others who have been there before are manifesting dangerous tendencies towards the objectives of the ANC, and that they need to be expelled. And later on, you've heard the likes of Gwede Mantashe that the ANC has received many people who are not supposed to be there. In 2000 and 2001, we had two documents, one the new cadre, the other one through the eye of the needle. That is 25 years ago. To say that people who are going to take office in the political party or even who become branch members must be vetted. They must be scrutinized for quality. All of them, every president of the ANC has lamented the quality of the average cadre of the ANC and the criminality of members of the ANC and the incompetence and non-performance of the members of the ANC. So this statement does not shock me. It has not changed anything. It has been made even by Mandela himself. It has not changed anything.
As a former international relations and cooperation minister, do you believe that the people that former minister Naledi Pandor refers to include both the international and national community? And will that distinction add to the impact of what she said?
People inside the country have got experiential understanding of the ANC, which is why consistently the ANC has lost a total proportionate electoral support. In other words, the number of seats they occupy in parliament, the number of seats they occupy in the metros, the percentage of votes they get in each province has been declining. So far they've lost the Western Cape, they've lost the Northern Cape, they've lost KZN, they've lost Gauteng. 4 out of 5 are already out of their hands. So the people inside the country have been demonstrating steadily over time, especially since 2009, that the ANC is in the wrong. Now, the international picture is tricky because there are other geopolitical questions which can conflate the standing of the ANC with the standing of the government. As an example, during the G20 summit, the European Union came and pledged support for South Africa. Now, the ANC could take that to be support for the ANC, but it may not necessarily be the case. So the international picture is a little bit more nuanced and more complex. But certainly the stature that the ANC has had historically on the continent, launching NEPAD, launching the African Renaissance, and so on, that stature has diminished substantially in the process of time.
Minister or former Minister Pandor is not the only senior member of the party that has made statements that the party has lost the plot. We've seen also former Presidents Thabo Mbeki, Kgalema Motlanthe and Jacob Zuma alluding to the fact that the ANC has lost its touch to the people. Even other senior party members, recently Dr. Malusi Gigaba and suspended Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. What effects do these statements have to the party?
The problem with the senior members of the ANC expressing themselves in the manner that they are in the culture of the African National Congress, when you make a statement like that, they try to attribute it to affection, that you are saying this because you are not in the gravy train, you are not eating enough, so then it fizzles out in the factional battles of the African National Congress. People will say, yeah, this one is positioning himself for that position or that position. And the history of the African National Congress, the recent history since 2009, shows clearly that there is no leader in the ANC who has ever warned the ANC about their mistakes, ever corrected anything. There's no leader since 2009 ever corrected the ANC. So they can make these statements. Those statements are not going to result in a change of behavior.
Can we see this then as the beginning of the road to the 2027 elective conference?
It's always a road there, but more importantly, a road to 2026, because the misconduct, the dereliction of duty, the corruption that is going on is definitely going to reduce once again the number of votes, the percentage of votes they get in each municipality and in the metros. So that is the first starting point where they are going to get feedback from the public. At this stage, when you talk about 2027, I have not seen any candidate that could come close to compare with, for instance, Thabo Mbeki in terms of quality and productivity. Or compare even to Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who was once for a short period of time a deputy president in this country. So the culture of proposing mediocres for municipal elections in 2026 and also for proposing substandard people for 2027, that culture is continuing. Gigaba has said, and Andile Lungisa for that matter, that the NEC itself is not up to standard, it's not up to the task.
So granted, then, a few things have marred the reputation of the ANC. But if we look at advances made in education, in science, in innovation and technology, as well as improvements in growing international trade, improving access to basic social services, on the other hand, that have been positives within the past 30 years of democracy driven by the ANC. Do you believe that ordinary South Africans take cognizance of these achievements, or they view them as normal or basic provisions and not something really to celebrate?
First of all, I happened to have to assist a journalist with a report of that nature yesterday. Some of these statements that are made by the government are actually just ordinary propaganda. When you look at the maths and science statistics, when you benchmark the learners, whether it's grade 9, grade 4 at different levels using the international benchmarks, the white schools are highly competitive on the global stage. The black schools are totally 100% dismal. They've been dismal during the Mandela and Mbeki presidency. They've worsened slightly under Cyril Ramaphosa. So the statistics that you get that show progress, for instance, in education, are the ones that are produced by the comrades. But when you take the same learners of theirs from the townships and the villages, the black townships and black villages, to test internationally and compare them even against other African students, our learners are not up to standard. In actual fact, to be sincere, when you look at the Stats SA data and some of the public comments by Badidi Hutla, you discover that as a proportion of the population in 1994, the proportion of graduates as part of the black population versus as a proportion of the white population, if you compare the two, the ratio was 1-to-1. Today, basically, it's 1-to-6. Roughly speaking, we are saying today where we are, because of population growth, you have one graduate, proportionately speaking, to 6 whites. Meantime, in 1994, it was 1-to-1. So we have actually been in reverse gear in the field of education. My uncle died during COVID. The guy had been a DG in Home Affairs. He occupied senior management positions in Parliament. He had money, he had everything. But he died on the floor in a hospital in Mdantsane during COVID. He died on the floor. He was lying on the floor. So to say that there's been this improvement and that improvement in health and all these other things, yes, from the perspective of government propaganda, not from the perspective of scientific and benchmarked information, there is no progress under the African National Congress.
So what will it take to restore the ANC's historic reputation, its values and missions? And also, can vehicles such as the National Dialogue prove effective in extracting lessons for this?
The only thing that changes anything on earth is leadership, the quality of leadership. Everything stands or falls on leadership. When we were in the doldrums in the 1970s, with the ANC band, PAC band, SACP band, and all that, it was the emergence of Stephen Biko that changed the game and changed it permanently. So you need the emergence of young leaders now who can start this thing afresh, completely from scratch, and the progress will be decisive and rapid. That is the only solution. The national dialogue, as things stand, Ramaphosa had his own dialogue. What is presently happening, and I was speaking to one of the traditional leaders, is that the Mbeki group, the foundations and all that, have started their own parallel process. of consulting, doing their own national dialogue parallel to the national dialogue of Cyril Ramaphosa. So you can see that actually there are a number of quotas that have lost confidence in Cyril Ramaphosa himself and in the ANC leadership in general. As you can see, even the DA is not even in that GNU. EFF is not there. MKP is not there. Out of the four largest parties, only one is actually spearheading this thing. So the national dialogue is a catastrophe. It's something that the comrades are doing for themselves.
Butsandile, Nkosi kakhulu ngexesha lakho. Thank you so much for your time and providing much needed insight and analysis on this topic.
Siyabulela, Nkosi. Bye.
That is political analyst Sandile Swana giving us his views on recent sentiments made by former Minister Naledi Pandor in the country about the political party, the African National Congress, and how it's losing its popularity, specifically using the words of the people looking at it with disdain, with horror and shame. So let's get our news headlines now. It's gone 8:30 Central African time. Good morning, Onele.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Violence in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado province has forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes. The anti-migrant group Operation Dudula has formally registered as a political party and plans to contest the 2026 municipal elections for the first time. And the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the Israeli strike on a hospital complex in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura with the details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda, for the final time this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. We'll start your sports bulletin with football news. So Liverpool's 16-year-old Riyongo Homa made history as the youngest scorer in the club's history when he struck with virtually the last kick of a breathless encounter to snatch victory against Newcastle United at a stunned St. James Park in the Premier League last night. And it got the drama it deserved as Newcastle rose off the canvas to battle the Premier League champions, pulling back to 2-2 after being 2-0 down and despite having Anthony Gordon sent off in the first half stoppage time. So Liverpool looked to have thrown away a victory that looked certain in the early moments of that second half until substitute Ngohoma, 16 years of age and 361 days, provided a sensational climax when he left unmarked to fire home in the 10th minute of the 11th added minutes. His winner, by the way, was also made him the fourth youngest scorer in the Premier League history, behind James Vaughan, James Milner, as well as Wayne Rooney. On to this now. Ferdinand Omanyala, who holds the African 100-meter record, is injured and has now pulled out of this week's Diamond League final in Zurich in Switzerland, the last event before the Tokyo World Championships. Now, the 29-year-old is one of 17 Kenyans who have qualified for Zurich. The globe's top athletes will compete at this event on Wednesday and on Thursday. Omanyala, who set the African 100-meter record of 9.77 seconds in September of 2021, was selected at the Kenyan trials in July as the country's only male entrant in the 100-meter event at Tokyo. He has struggled to find his winning form in the Diamond League this season. Meanwhile, Faith Kepyegon, the three-time world 1,500-meter champion, as well as a 10,000-meter champion Beatrice Chebet, will be competing as well in Zurich. They join the Olympic 800-meter champion as well as Diamond League winner Emmanuel Wanyoni, who has choked up about 4 wins with the fastest times this season. In tennis news now, Venus Williams battled bravely before bowing out of the US Open on her return to Grand Slam tennis on Monday as Melbourne champion Madison Keys suffered a shock first-round exit. Now, the second full day of action in New York saw all eyes turn to the Arthur Ashe Stadium, the night session of that stadium, where the 45-year-old Venus lost in 3 sets to the 11th seed Karolina Muchova of the Czech Republic. Now, Williams also returned to competitive tennis in July following a 16-month absence from the sport, and also had been granted a wild card into the main draw at Flushing Meadows. But hopes of a fairy tale run 28 years after her debut at the tournament back in 1997 ended in a 6-3, 2-6 and 6-1 loss to Muchova, who was not even born when Williams turned professional in 1994.
Yeah, I definitely had a bit of a slow start, but it's not really a bad thing. I just haven't played a lot of matches, so I'm still finding, everything. I think I had a love 40 game, and I was like, oh no, not a double break. So thankfully that was avoided, at least in that set. And, I was really able to start to dial into my game, and I didn't win today, but I'm very proud of how I played.
Now, Williams says she does not expect to play again this year, citing a reluctance to travel, but was also coy about whether she would consider seeking a place at the Australian Open next season.
Are there any tournaments in the States? Can someone move a tournament here? I don't know that I'm willing to travel that far at this stage in my career to go play. I mean, I love playing, and the level of my game has gone up so much since DC. I tried as hard as I could to throw off any rust, but at the end of the day, there's only so much that can really be accomplished in 3 or 4 matches. I don't play in high altitude either, so I won't be going to Guatemala.
The next major is in Australia, which you played well at a lot of times.
It's kind of far too.
That's a long flight.
Yeah, my goal is not my goal is to do what I want to do.
Well, today with tennis news, British number 1, that is Jack Draper, says he almost was a little bit happy to drop a set as he was put through a severe examination of his fitness on his US Open return. So Draper needed to dig deep to beat Argentine qualifier Federico Agustin Gomez 6-4, 7-5 and 6-7 and 6-2 in the first round in the early hours of this morning. Now, the 5th seed, who reached his first New York semi-finals just last year, was also playing his first singles match since Wimbledon in early July, this after suffering an arm injury. Draper is 23 years of age and is seen as one of the contenders for the title on his return to the scene of his breakout Grand Slam run. Well, that is a wrap from the sports desk this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. More sporting updates coming up in the next hour with the On The Move team. As always, for any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9.
Former politician and diplomat. He's the leader of the Democratic Alliance Party at one stage, and also served as South Africa's ambassador to Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay. Ambassador Tony Leon, if you were party leader now and in the GNU, what would you be pushing for?
I can speak with some direct experience because, as you might know, I was actually one of the negotiators of the GNU last year when it was formed. What I'd be pushing for is to hold the government or the president's feet to the fire on actually operationalizing the agreement that was implemented. Unfortunately, that agreement has been honored only in its breach. And I think, go back to basics and just say, okay, we're not going any further with this arrangement until we actually implement these steps.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine.
Let's now check in with the world of business. Here's Buntle Headbush with our details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. And our top story at this hour, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company says nearly all pipeline theft has been eliminated after coordinated efforts by the country's defense and intelligence agencies. The state oil firm Group Chief Executive Officer, Bayo Ojulari, says as little as 30% of oil sent through pipelines made it to Nigeria's export terminals 3 years ago, costing the government billions in lost revenue and leading to investment being deferred. Pipeline and terminal receipts are now attaining close to 100%. The NNPC projects that as a result of this, Nigeria's oil output could surpass 2.5 million barrels per day by next year. 6 main trade unions in Botswana have given the President Duma Boko-led administration until the 30th of September this year to address some critical issues affecting the cordial relationship between the employer and employees. In a petition they delivered yesterday, the workers noted with serious concern that the 2025-26 negotiations have stalled due to poor leadership on the side of government. The unions are demanding the redeployment, if not removal, of the permanent secretary to President Duma Boko, Emma Belwa-Tletse, and the director at the Directorate of Public Service Management, Khaone Machola, arguing that they are acting in bad faith. Secretary General at the Botswana Public Employees Union explains.
The labor relations under her watch have deteriorated this mainly as she is the orchestrator of the divide and rule tactic, something which we consider and view, and we further do not tolerate as the new government. Unfair and unbiased recruitment, which is tantamount to nepotism, under her watch, government negotiation team has engaged in the process of falsifying records or minutes of the 2025-26 salary negotiations.
Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa has launched a production booster kit program where small-scale farmers will receive at least $6,000 to help them develop up to 3 hectares. The booster facility is set to benefit 10,000 farmers who from the start did not benefit from various government input and loan schemes. Mnangagwa elaborates.
The Second Republic, in its people-centered development policies, leaves no one and no place behind. To guarantee inclusion of A1 farmers that did not benefit from the various irrigation schemes throughout the country, I am pleased today to announce the launch of the Productivity Booster Kit program. 10,000 A1 farmers will benefit under phase 1 of this program.
The Chinese ambassador in South Africa, Wu Beng, says Beijing will continue to deepen its bilateral ties with Pretoria. He took part in a seminar in Pretoria that seeks to enhance global trade cooperation amid rising protectionism. The world is anxiously following the sweeping tariffs imposed by the US. Peng says the tariffs have negatively affected the global economy.
This is a terrible tariff environment. However, I attend today's conference. The main message I send out to South African audience is that I believe the resilience of South Africa economy. Yes, the tariff dispute actually is not formidable, and our life will go on.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's fired Federal Reserve Board member Dr. Lisa Cook, informing her in a letter posted publicly that she was hereby removed from her position effective immediately. The move is seen as part of White House efforts to assert more influence in the board's decision-making, including setting interest rates, after much criticism directed at the bank by the president himself. Cook became the first black woman to sit on the central bank's board. Shoen Bryce Peace reports that it's unclear if Trump has power to terminate members of the Federal Reserve.
Trump's letter accused Dr. Cook of deceitful and criminal conduct over an allegation asserting 2 properties as her primary residence in an effort to get favorable mortgage rates. Cook earlier said she would not be bullied into resigning and that she intended to take any questions about her financial history seriously as a member of the Federal Reserve and would gather accurate information to answer any legitimate questions and provide the facts. Trump said Cook's alleged conduct called into question her competence and trustworthiness as a financial regulator. Fed board members serve 14-year terms and can only be removed by the president for cause.
And now for a look at the indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,528 naira this morning. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 29. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 11. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 13. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 41. Russia, 80 rubles 19. In India, it's 87 rupees 50. China, 7 yuan 15. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 54 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,375 per ounce, platinum at $1,329 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $68.52 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bontle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So it's still Women's Month in South Africa in this August, a time to celebrate courage, strength and progress. One organization making a difference is Relate Bracelets, a non-for-profit social enterprise that empowers women through beading while supporting causes across health, education, conservation and community upliftment. Our reporter Lebogang Mabangi has more.
At first glance, they may look like simple beads, but each Relate bracelet is a loop of hope handmade by senior women, township youth and refugees. For Relate, these bracelets are more than adornment. They are a way to create income, purpose and measurable impact. Dalit Shekel, CEO and founder of Relate Bracelets, explains.
Since 2010, we've sold over 4.5 million bracelets and generated more than 83 million in social impact. This is through earning opportunities for township elders and young adults who make the bracelets, and through funds donated to credible causes in health, education, conservation, and community upliftment. But the real heartbeat of Relate is the people behind each bracelet. Our gogos and tatas, often the backbones of their families, find dignity, purpose, and income through this work.
Shekel says what makes Relate stand out is its unique impact-first retail model.
What makes Relate unique is our model. We call it impact-first social retail, where commerce, community, and cause intersect. Each bracelet is transparent and accountable. Part of the sale goes directly to a cause, part creates income for our gogos and young adult crafters, and the rest sustains Relate so we can keep building jobs and opportunities. No donations, no handouts, just dignity, purpose, and measurable impact.
At the heart of this impact are the gogos, elderly women who bead bracelets to supplement their pensions, feed their families, and find a renewed sense of community. The work has provided both financial relief and companionship.
I've been doing beading 5 years now. It helped me a lot to be part of beading because I can buy electricity, fruit, and vegetable for me and my grandchildren. Pay with the money I get paid. I used to be lonely, but now I'm doing Relate beading. I'm happy, not lonely anymore.
And for 68-year-old Talisa George, the extra income helps stretch her pension.
Sometimes I run out of pension money, and this money from beading helps me to buy bread and milk and assist in buying toiletries of my house to be able to finish the month. You know, It is so useful, and I wish I can get more beadwork and more money from the program. It helps me not to borrow money from loan sharks.
This Women's Month, they are reminding South Africans that every bracelet tells a story of dignity, resilience, and women-led change. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
So as we continue on the topic of Women's Month, but also on Tuesdays on Rise and Shine, we dedicate this segment of the show to raising awareness more. Angela, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Tuesday?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, please tell us more about this initiative and the symbolism behind the choice of bras that you're collecting.
Yes, so one of the distribution we did for 1 tons of sanitary pads at the HIV positive home and also special girls. And one of the girls actually come up to me and say to me, Auntie Angela, next time when you come, please bring us some bras. Then we realized they are not wearing a bra, and perpetrators see that as an invitation of sexual attention. So at the beginning, we were only collecting 2,700 bras, but we came back with 6,200 bras. That also motivated me to climb Island Peak at that year, 6,200 meters. We lay out all those bras at the Constitutional Hill by the Women's Jail and handing a memorandum to the public safety. And we gave out all 6,200 bras to 3,100 women in South Africa. And we washed them, we labeled them, we packed them before we gave it to them. We even go extra mile to actually measure each one of them. And now we, because I just came back from Everest, and we are collecting 8,849 bras to commemorate the woman who actually passed away for gender-based violence. And that's why we need every citizen in South Africa to support this movement.
The bras collected across 9 provinces of the country of South Africa will become part of the Empower Her Bras for Humanity, an art exhibition that's going to be a traveling one. Then you're launching this during the 16 days of activism. Tell us or take us through this activation.
Yeah, so right now we actually got, we lack of 1,117 bras. And as soon as we receive all those bras, then we will go to different provinces and we are actually waiting for the results from Guinness Record. If we are going to travel all 9 provinces, that will be one of the biggest record in the world.
Let's talk about your involvement, because it goes beyond Mount Everest, as you've also trekked the Himalayas. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think people will ask me, how did it feel to get to the top of the world? But actually, it's not that it's not that romantic when you get to the top of the world. It's very hostile, and it's just like what every woman have to face every day. They are climbing their own mountain, and we together climbing with them.
You know, talk about clothing and how sometimes it's weaponized when it comes to gender-based violence as being something that is a woman's fault. We've heard statements like she was wearing this, she was wearing that, and that made her seem, easy. And you now taking an item of clothing and empowering these women. Talk to us through some of the stories you've heard in terms of the feedback and how they respond to you guys returning their dignity in this manner.
Yes, I think like you say, people will says that you only wear so little and you are exposing yourself. That's why GBV started. But I think no matter how little that person wear, there's no right for another person to attack them or to take advantage of them. So it's something that we need to know. It's at the bottom of the core. It's about human rights.
Absolutely. How critical is community involvement in fighting gender-based violence and standing against it in the context of South Africa, and what it means when we observe the 16 days of activism?
Yeah, I think it's also going back to a lot of people, a lot of women actually silence when they, you know, when GBV happened to them. I think that's something we are opening this conversation when we go around 9 provinces and to have the awareness, and they shouldn't be keeping quiet if that happened to them. And we really wanted to also going back to the core of why we're wearing a bra. What is that we impacting us when we're wearing a bra as a woman? And where's that dignity coming from? So I think those are the conversation we need to educate our next generations, and also telling them when this happened to you, you shouldn't be keeping quiet.
So you need about another 1,000, over 1,000 bras to go. How can people connect with you and get involved?
Yes, please go onto our website, www.impilo, IMPILO, collection, foundation.org.
All right, let's leave it there for now. And thank you so much for the work that you do, Angela. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up again soon and get in touch in terms of the work that you do. But please keep climbing those mountains.
Thank you.
Figuratively.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank you.
pleasure there. Angela Young is a South African mountaineer. She is part of the Impilo Collection Foundation, and they're calling on citizens,
Thank you.
corporates and communities to help collect bras. They're collecting these bras to, in some form, restore the dignity of those survivors of gender-based violence, particularly rape survivors. They are targeting 8,849 bras, and that figure, because that's the amount of meters covered in Mount Everest. She'll be climbing that mountain. They're just short of... when we started the chat, we knew of 2,100. As we are talking to her, it's actually over 1,000. So that figure has gone less. So people are coming forward there. That's how we're going to end our coverage in terms of the news and on Channel Africa's Rise and Shine. But coming up after our show is Palesa and Benjamin's show called On the Move. They're joining us now in studio to tell us what to expect.
Good morning, Asanda.
How are you guys?
Good. Feeling lonely without Peter today?
No, but not really, because the Nuntando's here, my technical producer.
Okay, perfect.
And Fenyo is over there as well, the producer, so not really.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you so much. Well, today on The Move, we're going to start by looking at, some of the things that are happening in terms of gambling. Yesterday, in fact, I was driving with my son and we were driving down the road and he saw like a place where so many people were gathered. He's like, what's going on over there? And I looked up at a sign and it was a sports betting place and it was packed outside. So evidently there is a huge gambling culture here in the country. But we're talking about best practices to protect gamblers here on the African continent and what needs to be done for also the success of gambling recovery programs.
Oh, yes, because, it can be addictive. And
Very
it can
addictive.
destroy families,
Yeah.
right? That's interesting because I don't know if sports betting has always been that popular. In
I
terms
think
of
now
gambling,
more than
but it was
ever,
always
hey?
casinos, and now it's
Yeah.
so many avenues, and online makes it easier to access as well.
Absolutely. We then move on into the cubicle. We have like a huge crisis, of course, in South Africa. In fact, the entire continent, the unemployment rate, but also a severe skills shortage. So we're going to be looking into that one today in the cubicle to take a look at a solution of mentorship to try and bridge these two. So we're going to take a look at the treating of mentorship as an extra, which is a bit of a business threat where it should actually be more of a norm.
Yeah, and then also we have our Money Matters feature. I saw this wonderful video of a lady speaking, and she was talking about this interesting thing and about the money stash. Do you have that money stash? This is something that many women have,
stash?
like a secret stash that women have for that rainy day. And it's interesting that what that lady was highlighting was the fact that as much as that stash is saved by them, right? Most of the time when they use that particular stash, it's not for themselves. It's actually for the people in their lives. but nobody knows about that stash. So
Yeah.
it's such an interesting conversation that we're going to have for our Money Matters feature.
I'm getting imagery in terms of what my grandmother used to do, and there's this metal box, a small one that she used to have her old
Yes,
stash on.
I remember
But I guess now
those.
it's like become digital, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much. That's coming up on the Move here on Channel Africa. Right, for this Tuesday, the 26th of August, we end our programming there as Rise and Shine. Thanking you again for tuning in and staying with us for these 3 hours. We'll do it again tomorrow. My name is Asanda Beda, and goodbye from me.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And we take a look at your top stories this hour. Violence in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado persists. An Israeli strike on a hospital complex in southern Gaza condemned. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. Violence in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado province